At 60, Shania Twain is finally being spoken about in a way that strips away the glitter and focuses on the long road that shaped her, not as a headline-making confession, but as a hard-earned reflection on survival and growth. Born Eileen Regina Edwards on August 28, 1965, she came into the world far from flashing lights, raised in the mining town of Windsor, Ontario, before growing up in the unforgiving terrain of Timmins, a place where winters were brutal and opportunities were scarce. That environment did not nurture dreams easily, yet it forged something relentless inside her, a sense that quitting was never an option even when circumstances seemed designed to break her. Her rise was never just about talent or luck. It was built on endurance, sacrifice, and a mindset shaped by scarcity. Poverty was not an abstract idea in her childhood, it was daily reality. Food was limited, clothes were passed down until they wore thin, and stability was fragile at best. From an early age, she understood that nothing would be handed to her and that survival demanded adaptability and emotional toughness. Creativity became her quiet escape, a place where fear loosened its grip and possibility felt real, even if only for a few minutes at a time. Music entered her life not as a hobby, but as a lifeline. She sang wherever she could, often in bars and small venues before she was even legally allowed inside them, performing to help keep her family afloat. These were not glamorous beginnings. They were exhausting nights, long drives, and crowds that did not always listen. Yet each performance sharpened her instincts, teaching her how to hold attention, how to project confidence even when she felt uncertain, and how to turn personal struggle into emotional connection. Behind the scenes, her home life remained unstable, marked by emotional strain and constant pressure. Still, she carried an unshakable belief that her voice could one day take her somewhere beyond the limits of her surroundings. That belief was tested brutally when she was just 21 years old and lost both parents in a sudden car accident. Overnight, her world shifted. Dreams of chasing a career were replaced by responsibility as she became the primary caregiver for her younger siblings, a role she accepted without hesitation. Instead of leaving, she stayed. She took a steady job performing at the Deerhurst Resort in Ontario, choosing security over ambition so her family would not fall apart. This chapter revealed something deeper than vocal skill. It showed discipline, loyalty, and a willingness to delay personal success for the sake of others. Many never see this version of her, yet it laid the foundation for the artist she would later become, someone grounded, resilient, and emotionally self-aware. Her breakthrough finally arrived in the early 1990s when she signed with Mercury Records and adopted the name Shania, meaning "on my way" in Ojibwe, a name that symbolized forward motion rather than reinvention. Her debut album did not dominate the charts, but it carried a spark that caught the attention of producer Robert John Mutt Lang, who saw more than potential. Their collaboration quickly became transformative, blending creative chemistry with a shared vision that challenged country music's boundaries. Together, they reshaped the sound. The release of The Woman in Me in 1995 was not just successful, it was disruptive. By merging pop hooks, rock energy, and country storytelling, the album carved out new space for women in the genre. Songs like Any Man of Mine, Whose Bed Have Your Boots Been Under, and You Win My Love pushed her into the spotlight, but they also sparked debate, signaling that country music was changing whether traditionalists liked it or not. Then came Come On Over in 1997, a release that did not simply break records, it rewrote expectations. The album crossed genres, borders, and audiences, becoming the best-selling studio album by a female artist in any genre and one of the highest-selling albums in music history. What mattered just as much was what it represented, A woman who had known hunger, responsibility, and loss had taken full control of her narrative, proving that resilience could scale to global impact without losing its core. With chart-topping singles like "Man, I Feel Like a Woman," "You're Still the One," and "From This Moment On," Shania Twain didn't just dominate the charts, she flipped the entire rulebook on what country music was allowed to be. Her sound pushed past tradition, blending confidence, emotion, and crossover appeal in a way that felt bold but natural. At a time when the genre still clung tightly to narrow expectations, she stood front and center, proving that country could be glamorous, fearless, and unapologetically modern without losing its emotional core. Her impact went far beyond radio play. Shania's music videos became cultural moments, instantly recognizable and endlessly replayed. Her fashion choices were daring and deliberate, mixing strength with style in a way that inspired countless artists who followed. She wasn't dressing for approval, she was dressing for ownership, and that attitude carried straight into her voice. For millions of listeners around the world, she became a symbol of empowerment, confidence, and self-belief, especially for women who rarely saw that level of independence celebrated in country music. She built her artistic identity around authenticity rather than tradition. The themes she leaned into, independence, self-worth, emotional honesty, connected with audiences far outside country music's usual boundaries. Pop fans, rock fans, and international listeners all found something familiar in her songs. Yet, even at the height of her success, personal challenges never stopped chasing her. Fame did not shield her from hardship, and success did not prevent life from hitting hard when it chose to. Her marriage eventually collapsed under the weight of a deeply painful betrayal, a moment that shook her both privately and publicly. Not long after, she faced an even more frightening blow when she was diagnosed with dysphonia and Lyme disease. The condition severely damaged her vocal cords, leaving her struggling to sing at all. For an artist whose entire identity was tied to her voice, the loss felt devastating. Doctors warned that her singing career might be over, and for a long time that fear felt very real. The years that followed were some of the most difficult of her life. She wasn't just fighting physical limitations, she was battling the emotional trauma of losing the one thing that had carried her through every hardship since childhood. Silence replaced applause. Doubt replaced certainty. Yet once again, the resilience that shaped her early life resurfaced. Through intensive vocal therapy, discipline, and relentless patience, she began the slow process of rebuilding both her voice and her confidence. When she returned with new music in 2017, it wasn't framed as a triumphant victory lap. It felt quieter, more personal, and deeply earned. The comeback marked more than a musical return. It represented survival. It reminded audiences that even the most extraordinary careers are forged through adversity, and that starting over doesn't erase the past. It reshapes it. Her later work carried the weight of experience rather than pressure to prove anything. In recent years, Shania has continued evolving rather than standing still. Las Vegas residencies, new recordings, documentaries, and carefully chosen public appearances have allowed her to celebrate her legacy without being trapped by it. Her warmth, humor, and humility have introduced her story to a new generation of fans who see her not just as a hitmaker, but as a human being who endured, adapted, and kept moving forward. She remains a pioneer who expanded the boundaries between country and pop, a trailblazer who took creative risks when industry voices doubted her direction. More than that, she stands as proof that reinvention is possible even after loss. Her personal and romantic life, however, had already taken a dramatic turn years earlier, beginning with one of the most pivotal encounters of her career. After the release of her self-titled debut album, the record that first introduced her to the industry, but did not yet fully showcase her songwriting strength, producer Robert John Mutt Lange took notice. Already a towering figure due to his work with AC/DC, Def Leppard, and Bryan Adams, Lange was struck immediately by the warmth, power, and clarity in Shania's voice. He reached out after hearing her original material, impressed not only by her vocals, but by the untapped potential he believed she carried as a songwriter. What started as a professional conversation soon turned into months of long-distance phone calls. They spoke for hours about music, lyrics, personal histories, and future ambitions, slowly building a connection rooted in trust, creativity, and shared vision. That bond would soon reshape both of their lives and permanently alter the sound of modern country music. During months of deeply personal and creatively charged phone conversations, a bond began to take shape between Shania Twain and Robert John Mutt Lange, one that was initially grounded in music but gradually drifted into something far more intimate. These were not casual industry check-ins or surface-level discussions. They talked at length about songwriting, sound, ambition, and vulnerability, slowly realizing that they shared similar emotional rhythms as well as artistic instincts. Long before they met in person, a sense of trust and familiarity had already taken root. Their first face-to-face meeting finally happened in June 1993 at Nashville's Fan Fair, a major country music event designed to bring artists and fans together in a celebratory setting. When they finally stood in the same room, the connection they had felt through the phone lines became undeniable. There was an immediate ease between them, paired with mutual respect and admiration. What had been theoretical suddenly felt real, and their relationship moved forward quickly, driven by the same intensity that fueled their creative collaboration. On December 28, 1993, they married, marking the beginning of a new chapter in both her personal life and professional journey. Their partnership soon became one of the most influential collaborations in modern music. Together they created albums like The Woman in Me and Come On Over, projects that reshaped the sound of country music and expanded its global reach. These records were not only commercial successes, they represented a shared vision built on risk-taking, reinvention, and emotional honesty. In August 2001, their son, Aja Lange, was born, bringing a sense of grounding during a period when Shania's career was operating at an unprecedented global scale. Motherhood became one of the most meaningful roles in her life, offering balance amid constant touring, media attention, and creative demands. From the outside, their family appeared solid and secure, a picture of success both at home and on the world stage. Behind closed doors, however, strain was quietly building. On May 15, 2008, the announcement of their separation stunned fans and the industry alike. It later emerged that Lange had been involved in an affair with Marie-Anne Thibault, someone Shania had considered a close friend and trusted assistant. The betrayal cut deeply, not only because of her marriage, but because it came from within her inner circle. In later interviews, Shania spoke candidly about the shock, abandonment, and emotional disorientation that followed. Their divorce was finalized on June 9, 2010, officially ending one of the most famous creative and romantic partnerships in music history. What followed was a period of emotional rebuilding rather than retreat. In an unexpected twist, Marie-Anne's former husband, Frédéric Thibault, had experienced a parallel betrayal. Through shared pain and mutual understanding, a new bond formed between him and Shania, one rooted in empathy rather than spectacle. Their relationship developed quietly, away from public pressure, and in December 2010, reports emerged that they were engaged. For many fans, the relationship symbolized resilience and emotional recovery rather than scandal. The couple married on January 1, 2011, choosing an intimate ceremony in Puerto Rico that reflected privacy, renewal, and intention, a deliberate contrast to the chaos that had preceded it. Beyond her personal relationships, Shania has long been defined by introspection and intentional living. She follows a vegetarian lifestyle, a choice shaped by health considerations and ethical beliefs connected to her upbringing in rural Canada. Her appreciation for nature and animals has remained a steady influence throughout her life. She also practices Sant Mat, an Eastern spiritual philosophy centered on meditation, moral living, and inner balance, which she has credited with helping her navigate fame, illness, and emotional upheaval. In 2010, drawing from her own difficult childhood, she founded Shania Kids Can, a charitable organization created to support children facing poverty, emotional neglect, and unstable home environments. The initiative focuses on providing safe spaces, academic assistance, and emotional support, addressing gaps often overlooked by traditional systems. The mission reflects her lifelong belief in responsibility, empathy, and giving back in meaningful ways. Her autobiography, From This Moment On, published on March 27, 2011, offered readers an unfiltered look into her life story. In its pages, she detailed her traumatic childhood, rise to global fame, marriage and divorce, serious health challenges including Lyme disease, and her eventual rediscovery of purpose and love, closing one chapter while clearly stepping into another. The book went on to become a bestseller, striking a deep chord with readers who no longer saw Shania Twain only as a global superstar, but as someone who endured, adapted, and survived. Reaching 60 did not push her into retreat or nostalgia. Instead, it made her more reflective, more open, and more willing to speak honestly about the influences that quietly shaped her path long before fame arrived. In a recent interview, she surprised many by finally sharing the full story behind her long-held admiration for the late Ricky Nelson, an influence she had carried privately for decades. This admiration was never about headlines or hype. It traced back to childhood, to moments of stillness inside a difficult life. She recalled sitting cross-legged on the living room floor in Timmins, watching a small television that offered brief escapes from hardship. She explained that every time Ricky Nelson appeared on the screen, something shifted inside her. His voice felt smooth and reassuring, his presence calm but powerful. Even as a child, she sensed that what he carried mattered. At the time, she did not have the language to explain it. She only knew that he was one of the first artists who made her think about music not just as sound, but as connection. She described wanting to make people feel what his songs made her feel, even before she understood what a career in music could look like. This was not a passing childhood crush. It was the early formation of artistic instinct during years marked by poverty, responsibility, and emotional strain. After the loss of her parents in a car accident, music became more than inspiration. It became shelter. She later explained that when life feels far too heavy at a young age, you cling to whatever brings light. Ricky Nelson's music, she said, offered that light. His songs felt comforting, steady, and gentle in a world that often felt unstable. They reminded her that beauty still existed beyond grief and obligation. As she matured into a singer and songwriter, her appreciation for Nelson deepened in new ways. She began to recognize his artistic courage, especially his ability to blend genres without forcing the transition. Country, rockabilly, and pop flowed together in his work with an ease that masked how groundbreaking it truly was. She noted that he never announced himself as a trailblazer, yet his choices quietly changed the rules. That subtle confidence stayed with her. Only later did she realize how much that approach had influenced her own career. When she fused country with pop and rock, challenging rigid boundaries in the genre, she saw echoes of what she had absorbed from Nelson years earlier. At the time, she did not consciously trace the connection. Her career moved too fast, and humility kept her from drawing attention to herself in that way. Some inspirations, she felt, were meant to be held close. Turning 60 changed her relationship with that silence. She described the milestone as liberating, a point where honesty felt less risky and more necessary. She explained that she had spent much of her life sharing her story in fragments, shaped by interviews, albums, and moments of crisis. This, she said, was a piece she had never truly spoken out loud. Giving Ricky Nelson recognition felt overdue, not for the public, but for herself. During her darkest years, especially when Lyme disease threatened her voice and her future as a singer, his music found its way back into her life. When doubt crept in and recovery felt uncertain, she returned to the very beginning, to the voices that first inspired belief. Hearing Nelson again reminded her of the girl who trusted music completely before success or fear complicated that trust. She emphasized that although she never met him, and although his life ended tragically in 1985, his influence never disappeared. It lived quietly in her musical instincts, her willingness to cross genres, and her belief that music should feel human before it feels perfect. As she looks ahead to new projects, new tours, and new creative chapters, she carries that influence with gratitude rather than nostalgia. She acknowledged that she owed him more than words could fully express. He helped shape her musical compass before she even knew she had one. At 60, she felt ready to finally say it openly, without hesitation or apology. The truth, as she shared it, was simple. Ricky Nelson helped ignite the fire that eventually carried her to the top of the music world, and with time granting perspective and peace, she felt comfortable placing that credit where it belonged. In sharing this reflection, she did more than honor a music icon. She revealed a quiet part of her own story that had lived in the background for years, shaping choices, offering comfort, and guiding her through moments of doubt. It stands as proof that childhood influences can echo across a lifetime, revealing their full meaning only when we slow down enough to look back clearly. If you enjoyed this deeper look into Shania Twain's story and the hidden influences behind her journey, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it with someone who loves music history, and leave a comment below with your thoughts, because we will see you in the next one.